Když se nad tím zamyslíš, tak to nebylo až tak cool, že? Mít 36 run, vole, nebo kolik? A všechny si je po jedné kupovat? Mělo to své kouzlo, no,
back in the day
řekl.
only had 1 or 2 complete pages and would be stuck using those same pages for a ton of different champions. I remember a long time ago there was a quote from I'm a Cutie Pie where he said something like, "Dude, I've been using the same rune page for like 5 years for ADCs and never changed it," which was definitely not optimal, but screw it, because a full page would cost anywhere about the same as 4 to 7 new champions, which is a trade-off that players often didn't make.
Všechny runy stály 4 až 7 šampionů, vole. Holy shit.
There were also lower tiered runes to help fill in slots when players couldn't afford the real ones, and in the case that you were an absolute gamer and somehow had all the runes, guess what? You couldn't change them in Champion Select, forcing you to buy more rune pages. I know a lot of you out there probably still have a bunch.
Se nemohl měnit v tom, vole, v Champion Selectu, takže si museli předchýstaný ty runy, no. Oni byly jakoby runy a masterky zvlášť ještě. Byly dvoje věci, jakoby, no. Teď už máš jenom jednu. A jmenuje se to runy dohromady, no.
Yes, the current runes are better. So, why?
A i sedí lorově do toho světa, protože doopravdy existují v loru a jsou prostě strašně mocný, jo.
Am I making this video then? Well, because better doesn't necessarily mean good, and certainly better does not mean perfect. Regardless of what year we're talking, I've never been a true fan of the rune system in this game because it could be improved upon drastically. I don't think that runes should be removed at all, by the way, because it's really fun to use them. Popping Electrocute, huge first strike procs, stacking lethal tempo, grasp and shield bash combination auto attacks, kiting with fleet. It's super fun, guys, but it's also kind of far from perfect. There were things that the old Masteries did a little bit better that were lost in all the other
Dělej, kolik jsi tam měl těch věcí, vole, v tom stromu, prostě. A každá věc jakoby ti přidávala strašně málo, mi přijde. A když jsem měl všechno už, tak to se dělalo dost, no. A ono se ti to odemykalo jakoby s každým levelem, že jo. Ty na levelu 1 si mohl vzít jenom jednu z těch věcí. Na levelu 30 už mohl mít teda všechny, že? Myslím, že.
Improvements. The old Masteries
To je docela náhodou pro hráče, který vole hrajou normálky a XP, že nemají všechny runy ani.
provided more of a chance to experiment.
Ale nejlepší bylo našetřit na ty runy, no. Protože, jak říkal, vole, že jedna run stránka stála, jakoby, měla hodnotu 4 až 7 šampionů, tak to je jako strašný, že jo. Já si to pamatuju ten pain, no, jakože šetřit na ty run stránky a na ty runy samotný ještě.
And have better customization for the individual.
Já si pamatuju, že když jsem šel z 0 na level 30, tak jsem hrál jenom, myslím, že free to play champy, k tomu jsem si koupil teda Mastera a Warwicka, hrál jsem jenom Mastera a Warwicka a šel jsem na Lísina a všechny runy. A když jsem dal 30. level, tak jsem si mohl koupit Lísina se všema runama a to bylo všechno. Navíc jsem neměl. Za 30 levelů. Za 30 levelů.
Adjust based on a player's playstyle and have better customization for the individual. It's important to remember that it used to be split into 2 categories, runes and masteries. The runes were simple and not at all like perks, they were just stats, and to be honest, it wasn't terribly interesting. The only cool part of the system, I suppose, is that you could choose more things than we can now. Most of the time these days, you're going to just take attack speed, adaptive force, and whatever resistances you need. Truth be told, most champions can take this and probably be fine. However, in the previous runes, you could take, for example, gold runes instead of damage. You could pick lethality runes for a big mid-game power spike, and you could even pick crit runes where sometimes players would be a little bit cheeky and swap one of their AD runes for a 1% crit chance. This would end up being hilarious if you actually netted a kill from it.
8x AD runu a jednou crit, že jo? To hrál každý. A vždycky to občas to critlo prostě, no.
And I guess that's, again, interesting, sort of, but compared to what we have today, it's not that bad, since any stats you used to gain from the runes are just moved to mythic passives. You can get as much lethality as you used to if you build Prowler's Claw. If you used to run an ability cooldown setup by taking CDR in your blue runes, well, you can get that now by grabbing one of the several mythics that give haste. If you want gold, we have Treasure Hunter, we have Futures Market, and First Strike. I believe it was a positive change that Riot combined runes and masteries all into one, because picking these stats wasn't interesting enough on its own to be a separate system. In today's main video topic, what I actually will be talking about is the system of Masteries, which was the predecessor to Runes Reforged. Runes Reforged came out for Season 8, and while being a solid change, I believe years later they missed the mark on...
Počkej, oni to vydali až v 8. sezóně, ty nový runy? Mně přišlo, že už jsou tak 6 let v té hře. Až v season 8 to tam dali, jo. Ty vole.
something they wanted to achieve.
No když to dali na začátku season 8 a teďka končí 12. sezóna, tak to je 5 let už vlastně, ne?
Think about what pages might
Iron
be cool
skin?
and fun and good.
To si nepamatuju tady tu runu, ty vole.
Incentivizing the player to
To je nějaký Iron skin. 5 armor. Heals including consumables increase your armor o 5%. Fuha.
experiment. Theory crap. Think about what pages might be cool and fun and good. I remember at the time watching Free
Co to bylo? Ještě jakýsi Ultimate Head? To jsem taky úplně zapomněl.
Good.
Hej to. A to bylo, jo, vždycky když zakástíš účko, tak cooldown toho účka je redukovaný.
I remember at the time watching Free. You can criticize my take if you want, but objectively, Runes Reforged has completely failed in terms of being about player choice and playstyle, because even Riot thinks so. Do you know why this season Riot implemented a brand new
Teď už je to zase moc prodanty ta hra, že? Že předtím jsi měl aspoň nějakou volbu a mohl jsi udělat nějaký runy, jaký jsi chtěl, vole. A teďka, vole, zase je to prostě už všechno předchystaný a už si jenom klikneš jednou a všechno ti to vybere prostě, no.
default rune builder for your champion?
Co jsou Runes Reforged? No to jsou tyhle ty nový runy, co máme teďka prostě, no. Tady tyhle ty, co vidíš, třeba.
Greedy Riot wants to destroy third-party sites. And, okay, look, fine, that's part of it. Yes, without a doubt, Riot probably
Jo, oni jim vadí asi ty profesorové a takový, že?
didn't like that sites like u.gg and op.gg
OPGG, UGG.
were taking away a good amount of traffic from their game.
No.
Obvious greedy corporate BS aside, do you know the more likely reason?
Jako teďka už třeba profesora nepotřebuju, já mám jenom v pozadí zaplýho, aby to ukazovalo timery na mapě, víš co?
This is where we need to talk about this row of runes. Conditioning, Second Wind, and Bone Plating. Each one of these runes are very good and can be used effectively, but for entirely different reasons that have nothing to do with playstyle and player choice. In this match, world champion winning mid laner Jaké is able to win this melee into range matchup that we saw a lot at the World Championship, Akali into Azir. Jaké, much like every other melee into range matchup that you will see at the highest level, takes the combo of Doran Shield and Second Wind. There is essentially no
Doran Shield a Second Wind je
good
OP,
way to
no.
play the lane properly in a melee versus range matchup
combo.
without taking Second Wind. If Akali goes conditioning or bone plating here, it wouldn't be because that's the
Bonebiting je myslím strašně useless, třeba na linku.
playstyle that's
Přijde dobrý do skirmishu, ale na linku je nahoru, protože to zrušej, že jo?
the old Masteries had a lot more choices, and in terms
Ty vole, no, tady ten strom, kámo, vůbec si nepamatuju, jak se jediná z těch věcí jmenovala.
of power level, they were all tuned down massively. The power creep of the game
Vím, že tady to oko ti dávalo HPčka, že ti to dalo víc HP.
really shows its
Třeba o 90 HP.
ugly face when it's referring to old runes and masteries. There was absolutely nothing that would give you thousands of healing, thousands of damage, and instead, precisely because they were a fraction of the power level, it meant something like the situation we laid out where it's like, if you don't take Second Wind here, you're doing this wrong. Masteries ended up going through two major cycles.
To, co tam teďka ukazoval, tak to bylo ještě někdy v season 1 až 3, no.
For
V season 4 to zase změnili. Nebo možná už season 3, já nevím už.
2016 and 2017, they introduced the Keystone Masteries. This is when things like Thunder
Jo. Tak 2016, což je season 6 až 7 jenom. Tohle to bylo jenom 2 roky ve hře. OK.
and Fervor of Battle were first introduced. However, before 2016, Masteries were still in the game, just without these major keystones.
To tam bylo tak dlouho, vole. To bylo až do season 5.
Let's start with the
Tady ty
2017 Masteries. The Cunning Tree was the perfect example of giving the player more choices. In this
Tohle to byl ten Storm, co si.
row, there were three options. One that was called
doslova.
Bandit, that which were Greenfather's Gift and Dangerous Game. Dangerous Game was a mix of triumph and presence of mind, but scaled down quite a bit, and Greenfather's Gift gave you a small empowered auto when in a bush, pretty similar to Ivern. Let's look at another row of three choices in this tree. Runic Affinity, which
To si pamatuju. To ti prodlužovalo buff od monstera o
jungle buffs
15%.
and Baron buff lasts 15%
To se z nějakého důvodu bralo, to bral úplně každý.
longer. Secret Stash, which was the predecessor to
To je co? Že tvoje potky trvají 10% díl?
Biscuits, and Assassin, which gave you 2% more damage when no allies were nearby. You can see how none of these are overwhelmingly strong, but it's just enough to make someone consider it based on how they like to play. A Jax player would definitely like to have Biscuits for the laning phase and help them scale, but maybe that 2% damage is alluring for all the split pushing they'll do later on. A Ryze player would also like to go biscuits, makes perfect sense for him, but maybe, just maybe, if you ask your jungler nicely, if you can get 2, 3, maybe 4 blue buffs during one of these longer games, it's really nice to have runic affinity then, wouldn't it? And that's the point of what this system did well.
No ty vole. Jako bych se podíval do minulosti, ale nevěděl, co ta minulost znamená. Říkám, pamatuju si jen tady to oko, to ti přidalo životy tady ta runa. Jinak nevím. Pamatuje si někdo? Co dělala nějaká runa tady z těch? Já vůbec. A to ti dávalo možná spellvamp, myslím, že tady to. A tohle to bylo na ty buffy teda. Tohle byly biscuity samozřejmě a tohle to ukazoval před chvilkou. Ale jinak jako nevím no. Vůbec nevím. Tohle bylo něco s Assassinem asi. To vypadá jak talon na tom obrázku, vole. Pěst nahoře na AD, jo to bylo asi na AD no. Ty červený runy většinou byly do AD, ty modrý byly jakože do damage a zelený samozřejmě asi do tanku, že jo.
Often I would see high level players
to je dneska asi jako stejný, jo.
Around with this and trying some new masteries, getting some
ale vyloženě support runa myslím, že nebyla moc, no.
New fresh ideas out there. Let's go all the way back to 2013 and look at
no to vypadalo úplně jinak ještě tady to, no. A tady bylo víc těch run ještě, no,
defensive tree because there was some pretty cool stuff in here. This row had Defender, where some minor resistances were given to you if teammates were nearby. This would be pretty cool to take if you're more of a team fighter or a player who likes to group. Legendary Armor increased your resistances based on percentages, good if you're going to build a full tank this game. And Good Hands would reduce the time of death, very good if you're Bouse. And finally in this row...
Ona byla runa, která ti redukovala tady tahle runa, která ti redukovala jakoby čas strávený posmrtně. Tu se ani nepamatuju vůbec tady ty věci. Já tohle to vím, co dělal. Tohle z toho, tady tady ta zbroj, tak to ti dávalo, myslím, že plus 2 armor, plus 2 resistů. Když do toho dal všechny 3 ty staky jakoby, tak ti to dalo 6 armor a 6 resistů. Myslím.
If the enemy has a Yasuo or a Tryndamere and some traditional ADC, you should definitely take this rune, and that would be the correct choice. This one is more along the lines of being situationally always correct, so I think it's less interesting than the other options here. But remember, this is just one of the many different choices.
Dřív si tam měl ty vole 30.
And wouldn't be taking up a huge 1 out of 5 slots for the minor runes like it would now. I think where Riot truly messed up with the new runes is that too many of them are far similar to reinforced armor, where it's so obviously correct sometimes, and instead they should have done things more like Good Hands. Improved recall was pretty cool. It would reduce the time of your recalling, and I love this idea and wish we still had it in the game. In the same row,
jako chtěl bys mít Bause, který má runu Good Hands, která mu redukuje posmrtný čas, aby ten Sion byl vole víc živej, když je v podstatě jenom stop mrtvej. Nevím, no, asi bych proti tomu chtěl hrát zase úplně.
Which gave some mana regen, good for champions who like to stay in lane, or you could go for Wanderer, which gave them movement speed out of combat.
Wanderer, ty vole, no.
Much better for a roaming playstyle. And you could see how the same player playing the same champion could maybe mix this up if they wanted to play a little differently. Again, while it's very true that meditation seems normalized for Ryze, you should probably always take it, right? Well, what if you like to roam? What if you like to move around the map and make things happen? You wouldn't miss out on so much mana regen that the entire lane is no longer playable, and you wouldn't necessarily miss out on so much out of combat movement speed that you can never roam. The Wealth Mastery would increase your starting gold, and based on how many points you put into it, it could
Wealth Mastery? Já myslím, že tenhle ten strom, že dával nějak i hodně goldu, takže se jednu dobu hrál úplně na všechno, no. Že to byl prostě support strom, utility mastery tree, tady to vidíš. Ale hrál se prostě, myslím, že na všechno, snad jungly, vole, na midu, na supporta. Myslím, že na tyhle 3 role se hrál. Tady ten strom. Myslím, že jsem ho hrál na Udyrovi nebo na Amumovi v jungli dokonce. A i na Nautilusovi v jungli, který se hrál v season 2.
The old system was very interesting because you decided how much you wanted to tech into each mastery rather than being so binary, either off or on. Awareness would increase experience, which is pretty cool for Kassadin players who like to scale, but clearly you would be giving up some early power to take this. And finally, there were masteries that were specifically for junglers, something that we don't see at all today. Bladed Armor, for example, was a defensive mastery that gave a mini Thornmail effect applying to monsters whenever they would hit you. The only rune that has anything to do with jungle at the moment, I guess, would be the Smite cooldown from Cosmic Insight, but I would hardly call that a jungle-focused rune.
Pravda, no, že není prostě žádná vyloženě runa pro junglery, jenom ta jedna, která dává jakoby redukovaný cooldown na summon spell, což je i na smite.
By having more choices that gave a minor yet still noticeable effect, it means that you're more likely to want to experiment. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Please feel free to let me know what you guys think in the comments down below of both the current rune system and the old one. I loved the old minor masteries, but the current keystones are still pretty cool and I do enjoy them a lot. Heck, it's even fun to just go in the practice tool and see how big of a first strike proc you can get, because why not? I don't know, it's pretty exciting and fun to go for big combos. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a like.
OK, dáme like. Dobré video. Vám pošlu tu video, byste chtěli ho vidět třeba. Ten kanál dělá dobrý videa hodně. Doporučuji. No každopádně jako nevím, no, nové runy jsou asi lepší, že? Nejsou tak zmatený, není tam toho tak strašně moc, nemusíš mít samý run stránky. Musíš mít 10 run stránek a nakoupených 150 run, jako doslova 150 run třeba, abys mohl hrát všelijaký rola třeba. Není to taková osina v prdeli, no. Když tady runy přijdou jak p***vina, i když jsem vtedy nehrál, ale tak přijde mi to o ničem, když například nerfovou runu, kterou jsi skoupil a teď nemáš esenci na to, aby si skoupil ta, co je v metě. Ale takhle moc se to neměnilo. Oni nenerfovali runy moc. Oni byli furt stejný, jenom si musel mít strašně moc a musel za to utratit strašně moc esencí, jo.